This sound, this smell, this sight, all remind me of the campfires of my childhood, when anyone could become a storyteller in front of the dancing flames. There was this wondrous ending when people and fire will fall asleep almost in unison. It was dreaming time. Now, my story has a lot to do with dreaming, although I'm known to make my dreams come true. Last year, I created a one-man show. For an hour and a half, I shared with the audience a lifetime of creativity, how I pursue perfection, how I cheat the impossible. And then Ted challenged me. Philippe, can you shrink this lifetime to 18 minutes? 18 minutes, clearly impossible. But here I am. One solution was to rehearse a machine gun delivery in which every syllable, every second will have its importance and hope the audience will be able to follow me while I... No, the best way for me to start is to pay my respects to the gods of creativity. So please join me for a minute of silence. Okay, I cheated, it was a mere 20 seconds, but hey, we're on TED time. When I was 6 years old, I fell in love with magic. For Christmas, I got a magic box and a very old book on card manipulation. Somehow, I was more interested in pure manipulation than in all the silly little tricks in a box. So I looked in the book for the most difficult move, and it was this. Now, I'm not supposed to share that with you, but I have to show you the card is hidden in the back of the hand. Now, that manipulation was broken down into 7 moves described over 7 pages. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7. And let me show you something else. The cards were bigger than my hands. 2 months later, 6 years old, I'm able to do 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. And I go to see a famous magician and proudly ask, but what do you think? 6 years old. The magician looks at me and said, this is a disaster. I mean, you cannot do that in 2 seconds and have a minuscule part of the card showing. For the move to be professional, it has to be less than 1 second, and it has to be perfect. 2 years later, 1 zip, and I'm not cheating, it's in the back, it's perfect. Passion is the motto of all my actions. As I'm studying magic, juggling is mentioned repeatedly as a great way to acquire dexterity and coordination. Now, I had long admired how fast and fluidly jugglers make objects fly. So that's it, I'm 14, I'm becoming a juggler. I befriend a young juggler in a juggling troupe, and he agrees to sell me 3 clubs. Well, in America, you have to explain, what are clubs? Nothing to do with golf. They are those beautiful oblong objects, but quite difficult to make. They have to be precisely lathed. Oh, when I was buying the clubs, somehow the young juggler was hiding from the others. Well, I didn't think much of it at the time. Anyway, here I was, progressing with my new clubs, but I could not understand. I mean, I was pretty fast, but I was not fluid at all. The clubs were escaping me at each throw, and I was trying constantly to bring them back to me, until one day, I practiced in front of Francis Brune, the world's greatest juggler. And he was frowning, and he finally asked, can I see those? So I proudly show him my clubs. He said, Philippe, you have been had. These are rejects. They are completely out of alignment. They are impossible to juggle. Tenacity is how I kept at it against all odds. So I went to the circus to see more magicians, more jugglers, and I saw, oh no, I didn't see, it was more interesting. I heard about those amazing men and women who walk on thin air, the high wire walkers. Now, I have been playing with ropes and climbing all my childhood, so that's it. I'm 16, I'm becoming a wire walker. I found 2 trees, but not any kind of trees with character. And then a very long rope, and I put the rope around and around and around and around and around until I have no more rope. Now, I have all those ropes parallel like this. I get a pair of pliers and some coat hanger, and I gather them together in some kind of ropey path. So I just created the widest tightrope in the world. What did I need? Well, I needed the widest shoes in the world. So I found some enormous, ridiculous, giant ski boots, and then wobbly, I get on the ropes. Well, within a few days, I'm able to do one crossing. So I cut one rope off, and the next day, one rope off, and a few days later, I was practicing on a single tightrope. Now, you can imagine at that time, I had switched the ridiculous boots for some slippers, right? So that is how, in case there are people here in the audience who would like to try, this is how not to learn wire walking. Intuition. Is a tool essential in my life. In the meantime, I am being thrown out of 5 different schools because instead of listening to the teachers, I am my own teacher, progressing in my new art and becoming a street juggler. On the high wire, within months, I'm able to master all the tricks they do in the circus, except I am not satisfied. I was starting to invent my own move and bring them to perfection. But nobody wanted to hire me. So I started putting wire in secret and performing without permission. Notre Dame, the Sydney Harbour Bridge, the World Trade Center. And I developed a certitude, a faith, that convinced me that I will get safely to the other side. If not, I will never do that first step. Well, nonetheless, on the top of the World Trade Center, my first step was terrifying. All of a sudden, the density of the air is no longer the same. Manhattan no longer spreads its infinity. The murmur of the city dissolved into a squall whose chill and power I no longer feel. I lift the balancing pole, I approach the edge. I step over the beam, I put my left foot on the cable. The weight of my body rests on my right leg, anchored to the flank of the building. Shall I ever so slightly shift my weight to the left, my right leg will be unburdened, my right foot will freely meet the wire. On one side, the mass of a mountain, a life I know. On the other, the universe of the clouds, so full of unknown, we think it's empty. At my feet, the path to the North Tower, 60 yards of wire rope. It's a straight line, which sags, which sways, which vibrates, which rolls on itself, which is ice, which is 3 tons tight, ready to explode, ready to swallow me. An inner howl assails me, the wild longing to flee. But it is too late. The wire is ready. Decisively, my other foot sets itself onto the cable. Faith is what replaces doubt in my dictionary. So after the walk, people ask me, well, how can you top that? Well, I didn't have that problem. I mean, I was not interested in collecting the gigantic, in breaking records. In fact, I put my World Trade Center crossing at the same artistic level as some of my smaller walks, or some completely different type of performance. Let's see, such as, well, my street juggling, for example. So each time I draw my circle of chalk on the pavement and enter as the improvising, comic, silent character I created 45 years ago, I am as happy as when I am in the clouds. But this here, this is not the street. So I cannot street juggle here, you understand? So you don't want me to street juggle here, right? You know that, right? You don't want me to juggle, right? Huh. Thank you. Thank you. Each time I street juggle, I use improvisation. Now, improvisation is empowering because it welcomes the unknown. And since what's impossible is always unknown, it allows me to believe I can cheat the impossible. Now, I have done the impossible not once, but many times. So what should I share with you? Oh, I know, Israel. Some years ago, I was invited to open the Israel Festival by a high wire walk, and I chose to put my wire between the Arab quarters and the Jewish quarter of Jerusalem over the Ben Hinnom Valley. And I thought it would be incredible if in the middle of the wire, I stop and I, like a magician, I make appear a dove and send her in the sky as a living symbol of peace. Well, now, I must say it was a little bit hard to find a dove in Israel, but I got one. And in my hotel room, each time I practice making it appear and then throwing her in the air, she will graze the walls and end up on the bed. So I thought, no, it's okay. I mean, the room is too small. I mean, a bird needs space to fly. It will go perfectly on the day of the walk. Now comes the day of the walk. 80,000 people spread over the entire valley. The mayor of Jerusalem, Teddy Kollek, comes to wish me the best, but he seemed nervous. I mean, there was tension in my wire, but I also could feel tension on the ground. Because actually all those people were made of people who were, for the most part, considered each other enemies. So I start the walk. Everything is fine. I stop in the middle. I make the dove appear. People applaud in delight. And then, in a most magnificent gesture, I send the bird of peace into the azure. But the bird, instead of flying away, goes flop, 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 and ends on my head. And people scream. So I grab the dove, and for the second time, I send her in the air. But the dove, who obviously didn't go to flying school, does flop, 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 and ends up at the end of my balancing pole. So now, you laugh, but hey, I sit down immediately. It's a reflex of wire walkers. Now, in the meantime, the audience, they go crazy. I mean, they must think this guy with his dove, he must spend years working. I mean, what a genius, what a professional. So I take a bow, I salute with my hand, and at the end, I bang my hand against the pole to dislodge the bird. Now, the dove, who, now obviously, cannot fly, does for the third time a little flop, 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 and ends up on the wire behind me. And the entire valley goes crazy. No, but hold on, I'm not finished. So now I'm like, 50 yards from my rival. And I'm exhausted, so my steps are slow. And something happened. Somebody somewhere, a group of people start clapping in rhythm with my steps. And within seconds, the entire valley is applauding in unison with each of my steps, but not an applause of delight like before, an applause of encouragement. For a moment, the entire crowd had forgotten their differences. They had become one, pushing me to triumph. You know what? I want you just for a second to experience this amazing human symphony. So let's say I am here and the chair is my rival, okay? So I walk, you clap, everybody in unison. So after the walk, Teddy and I become friends, and he tells me he has on his desk a picture of me in the middle of the wire with a dove on my head. I mean, he didn't know the true story. And whenever he's daunted by an impossible situation to solve in his, hard-to-manage city, instead of giving up, he looks at the picture and he says, if Philip can do that, I can do this. And he goes back to work. Inspiration. By inspiring ourselves, we inspire others. I mean, I will never forget this music, and I hope now neither will you. Please take this music with you home and start gluing feathers to your arms and take off and fly and look at the world from a different perspective. And when you see mountains, remember, mountains can be moved. Thank you. Thank you. Oh, thank you.